Arbiter Velshara stood in the Grand Council chamber and stared at the empty seats. 300 species had gathered for the emergency session. The massive hall buzzed with confused voices. Everyone was asking the same question. Where were the humans? The Earth Embassy had gone dark 6 months ago. Every human diplomat, every human worker, every human scientist across the galaxy had simply vanished. They left no warning. They sent no angry messages. They just went home. Velshara touched the communication panel on her desk. The screen flickered to life. She tried again to reach Earth. The same automated message played back. The human delegation has been recalled. All Earth embassies are now closed. We thank the Galactic Council for the opportunity to participate. We wish you well in your future endeavors. That was it. Nothing more. The message was polite, professional, cold. This is ridiculous, Councillor Threxon said from his seat. His scales rattled with annoyance. They are throwing a tantrum like children. We should ignore this foolishness. Several other councillors made sounds of agreement. Velshara watched them and felt something twist in her stomach. She had been on the council for 40 years. She had seen many species come and go, but this felt different. They are upset about the vote, said Councillor Cathres. Her tentacles waved dismissively. We rejected their proposal, so they decided to sulk in their corner of space. Let them. We managed fine before they arrived. We will manage fine now. The vote. Yes, that had been the final straw. 3 months before the humans left, they had proposed an amendment. They wanted fairer distribution of resources to developing worlds. They had presented data, charts, carefully written arguments. Ambassador Chen had spoken for 2 hours, explaining how the current system was hurting smaller species. The council had voted it down. 47 species voted no. Only 2 voted yes, the humans and the small Rivik delegation. Velshara remembered watching Ambassador Chen's face. The human woman had not looked angry. She had not shouted or protested. She had simply closed her folder, bowed politely, and left the chamber. 2 weeks later, every human in council space began packing their belongings. We should discuss the practical matters, Velshara said, calling the session to order. The humans held several important positions. We need to assign new personnel to cover their duties. What duties? Threxon laughed. They did basic work, maintenance, supply coordination. Simple tasks that anyone can do. We gave them those positions because they were new. Young species need to learn their place before they can handle important work. Velshara pulled up a file on her screen. She had spent the last week reviewing what the humans actually did. The list was longer than she expected. The humans maintained 83% of the Universal Translation Network, she read aloud. They coordinated logistics for 70% of trade routes. They staffed 90% of colony supply management. They volunteered for all disaster relief operations in the past 50 years. The chamber grew quieter. Some councillors shifted in their seats. They also handled most diplomatic mediation between member species. Velshara continued. According to records, humans resolved 60% of commercial disputes in the Trade Guild. They wrote most of the maintenance protocols for our infrastructure. They trained new species entering the council. Yes, Threxon interrupted. Grunt work, as I said. Important species handle policy and leadership. The humans did the busy work. It kept them occupied. Velshara wanted to argue, but she looked around the chamber and realized most councillors agreed with Threxon. They had all thought the same way, including her. If she was honest with herself, humans had joined the council 150 years ago. They were young, enthusiastic. They had arrived with ideas and energy. At first, the council had been curious about them, but humans had no ancient civilization. They had no great philosophical traditions like the Sen. They had no artistic mastery like the Velcor. They had no mathematical genius like the Quill. What humans had was a strange willingness to work, to fix things, to help. They volunteered for tasks that other species found boring. When something broke, humans figured out how to repair it. When someone needed help, humans showed up. The council had accepted this eagerly. Let the humans do the tedious work. Important species could focus on important matters. Velshara remembered dozens of council sessions where human delegates tried to speak. They would raise their hands, wait patiently to be recognized. Often they were ignored. When they did speak, other councillors would talk over them or dismiss their ideas. Ambassador Chen had once proposed an update to the medical supply distribution system. She had research showing it would save thousands of lives. Counselor Prex had laughed and said, "Stick to fixing things, Ambassador. Leave complex policy to species with more experience." Chen had bowed and sat down. 3 months later, she quietly implemented parts of her plan anyway, working within her limited authority. The system did improve. No one thanked her. Most counselors never even noticed. That was how it always went. Humans would see a problem, try to speak up, get dismissed, then quietly fix what they could without bothering anyone, until they stopped. Velshara closed the file and looked at the gathered council. "We need to form committees to reassign human duties. Who will volunteer to take over the translation network maintenance? Silence, the logistics coordination, more silence, the supply chain management, the protocol documentation, the training programs?" No one raised a hand. No one met her eyes. "This is not our responsibility," Cathres finally said. "We have our own important work. Hire contractors. Find some other young species to do these simple tasks." The council agreed quickly. They formed a small committee to handle the hiring. Then they moved on to other business. Within an hour, most counselors had forgotten about the human problem. But Velshara could not forget. That night she sat in her office and reviewed more files. She found something that made her breath catch. It was a message. A simple note left in every human database across the galaxy. The same words copied everywhere humans had worked. "You'll manage. You always said you would," she read it again. It was not angry. It was not cruel. It was just factual. The humans were taking the council at their word. If this work was so simple, if anyone could do it, then the council would manage fine. Velshara looked out her window at the stars. Somewhere out there, all the humans had gone home. They had packed their belongings, said polite goodbyes to friends from other species, and left. Silently. She thought about that word. Silently. Humans could have made a scene. They could have sent angry letters. They could have sabotaged systems or caused problems on their way out. They had done none of that. They had simply withdrawn every human from every station, every embassy, every outpost, clean, professional, complete. And somehow, that silence was louder than any protest could have been. Velshara turned back to her desk. She had a feeling this was just the beginning. The council had grown comfortable with human help. They had never bothered to learn what humans actually did. They had never said thank you. Now they would learn the hard way. 3 months had passed since the emergency session. Velshara sat in her office and read through the daily reports. Her hands trembled slightly as she turned each page. The problems were getting worse. It started small. A translation error here. A delayed shipment there. Nothing that seemed connected. Nothing that screamed emergency. But Velshara had been watching carefully. She saw the pattern. The Universal Translation Network had started glitching 2 months ago. Conversations between species would suddenly fail. Words would come out wrong. Entire sentences would vanish into static. The technical team said they were working on it. But the glitches kept happening. Yesterday, a trade negotiation between the Kelvor and the Prin had collapsed when the translator turned a polite greeting into an insult. The two species almost went to war. Velshara had spent 6 hours mediating. She pulled up the technical report. Her eyes caught on one line. System architecture designed and maintained by Human Engineering Corps. Documentation incomplete. Original programmers unavailable for consultation. Velshara made a note. Then she opened the next report. Trade routes across the galaxy were becoming inefficient. Ships were taking longer to reach destinations. Fuel costs had increased by 30%. Cargo was getting lost. The Trade Guild had filed 17 complaints this month alone. The report explained that route optimization algorithms needed updating. No one on the current team understood how the algorithms worked. They had been designed by human logistics coordinators over the past century. The humans had maintained them, updated them, improved them constantly. No one else had bothered to learn. Another note on Velshara's growing list. The door chimed. Counselor Cathres entered without waiting for permission. Her tentacles were moving in agitated patterns. "We have a situation," Cathres said. "The Outer Rim colonies are reporting medical supply shortages." "Critical shortages?" "They are requesting emergency assistance." Velshara felt her stomach drop. What happened? "The supply chain has broken down. Ships are arriving late or going to wrong locations. 3 colonies have completely run out of basic medications. We have sick people with no treatment. Where is the supply management team? Cathres looked uncomfortable. They are trying. But the system is complicated. The humans designed it. They handled all the coordination. We are attempting to figure it out, but what? It is more complex than we thought. The humans made it look easy. Velshara wanted to scream. Instead, she took a deep breath. Send emergency supplies from central reserves. Direct routing. We will bypass the automated system. Cathres nodded and left. Velshara added medical supply chain to her list. Over the next week, more problems appeared. The Council's communication network started failing. Messages between worlds would arrive days late or not at all. The technical team discovered that humans had been maintaining 83% of the network infrastructure. They had done it so smoothly that no one even noticed the work happening. Then came the report that made Velshara's blood run cold. A colony ship called the New Dawn had suffered life support failure. 43 people died before they could reach a rescue station. The investigation revealed that the maintenance protocol had been written by human engineers. The protocol was available, but it was written in a way that assumed the reader understood basic principles. The ship's engineer had followed the steps exactly as written, but he did not understand why those steps mattered. When an unexpected problem occurred, he did not know how to adapt. He just kept following the checklist while people suffocated. The human engineer who wrote the protocol had assumed that anyone reading it would understand the underlying systems, would know when to think instead of just follow instructions. That was how humans learned. They figured things out. They adapted. Other species had relied on specific, detailed instructions. Humans had provided those instructions. But humans were not there anymore to explain when something went wrong. Velshara attended the memorial service for the New Dawn victims. She stood with other counselors and listened to grieving families. She felt sick. "This is a tragedy," Threxen said after the service. "We must demand that the humans return to fix these problems. They are responsible." "Are they?" Velshara asked quietly. "Of course. They built these systems. They should maintain them. They offered to train others. Many times. I reviewed the records. Over 150 years, humans filed thousands of requests to train other species in maintenance and operations. Every request was denied or ignored. Threxen waved a claw dismissively. "We did not need training. These were simple tasks." "Apparently not." The counselor glared at her. "You defend them? After they abandoned us?" Velshara met his eyes. "They did not abandon us. We dismissed them. For a century and a half, we treated them like servants. We gave them all the work we found beneath us. We never thanked them. We never acknowledged what they did. Then we voted down their one major proposal without even truly considering it. So they ran away like cowards. No, they left like people who finally realized they were not wanted." Threxen stomped away, but Velshara's words spread. Other counselors began reviewing records. They found the same pattern everywhere. Humans requesting to train others. Humans offering to teach. Humans writing reports explaining how systems worked and what future problems might occur. All ignored. All dismissed. The Trade Guild convened an emergency meeting. Velshara attended as an observer. The guildmaster, a Velcor named Sin, presented her findings. "We have analyzed commercial disputes over the past 50 years, Sin said. Humans mediated 60% of all cases. They had a resolution rate of 93%. Since their departure, we have resolved only 30% of new disputes. Many are escalating to legal action or worse. Why were humans so effective? Someone asked. They listened. They understood both sides. They found compromises that worked for everyone. They were patient. They did not favor their own species or allies. They just wanted fair solutions." The room fell silent. Everyone had thought human mediators were just convenient, available, willing to do boring work. No one had realized they were actually skilled. More reports came in. Peacekeeping drones across the galaxy were malfunctioning. Humans had programmed their ethical subroutines. Without monthly updates from human programmers, the drones were making poor decisions. 3 incidents had resulted in civilian casualties. The Council's famous artificial intelligence advisors stopped working. Investigation revealed they were not truly artificial intelligence. They were sophisticated programs designed and maintained by human computer scientists. Without human oversight, they crashed. Disease outbreaks occurred on 3 worlds. Humans had been quietly monitoring health data across the galaxy. They had created early warning systems. They had tracked disease vectors. They had prevented dozens of epidemics before they started. No one had known because the epidemics never happened. Now there was no monitoring, no early warning. People died. Velshara compiled everything into a comprehensive report. She presented it to the full council. The chamber was quieter than she had ever seen it. "What do we do?" asked Councillor Prex, the same one who had dismissed Ambassador Chen years ago. "We have 3 options," Velshara said. 1, we teach ourselves these systems. It will take years. Many will die while we learn. 2, we hire contractors. Humans are offering their services at triple their previous compensation. 3, we ask them to return. Ask? Threxan stood up. We should demand. We are the Galactic Council. They are one small species. Velshara played an audio recording. It was intercepted communication between human colonies. Not addressed to the Council. Not meant for Council ears. But it had been picked up by monitoring stations. A human voice spoke. Male. Tired but content. "Yeah, it's good to be home. We're making real progress now. Solved the dark matter equation last month. The expansion into the local cluster is ahead of schedule. Kids are happy. No more dealing with the Council's bureaucracy. No more being talked down to. We just focus on our own work now. It's peaceful," another voice responded. "Do you miss it?" "The galaxy?" The other species? A pause. Then, "I miss some individuals. Good people. But the Council? No, they made it clear we were only good for grunt work, so we left them to it. They said anyone could do what we did. Let them prove it." Velshara stopped the recording. She looked around the chamber. "They do not need us," she said quietly. "We need them. And they know it." No one spoke. The truth hung in the air like poison gas. The humans had not sabotaged anything. They had not destroyed anything. They had simply stopped doing all the work that no one else wanted to do. All the work that everyone thought was simple, easy, beneath them. And now the galaxy was falling apart. The Galactic Data Network crashed on a Tuesday morning. One moment, information flowed freely across 1,000 worlds. The next, everything went dark. Velshara was in a meeting when it happened. Screens flickered and died. Communication devices went silent. The entire Council headquarters lost connection to the outside galaxy. Emergency lights kicked in. Alarms blared. "What is happening?" Cathres demanded. The technical director, a quill named Zex, worked frantically at a backup terminal. His mathematical mind processed data faster than most species could think. But even he looked lost. "The core architecture has failed," Zex said. His voice was shaking. "The network is not just offline. It has collapsed completely. Fix it. I cannot. I do not understand how it works. The documentation exists, but..." He pulled up files on his screen. "Look, the humans wrote this. It assumes knowledge we do not have. It is like trying to understand poetry when you only know basic grammar." Velshara moved to look at the screen. She saw lines of code, diagrams, instructions that seemed clear but somehow were not. Every section assumed you understood the previous section. Every explanation built on knowledge that apparently only humans had written down fully. "They documented everything," Zex continued. "But they documented it for other humans. For people who think like they do, who see patterns like they do. I am one of the most intelligent beings in the galaxy, and I cannot understand what they built." The room fell silent except for the alarm. Velshara felt something cold settle in her chest. The data network connected everything. Commerce, communication, defense, medical systems. Everything ran through it and it was gone. "How long to restore it?" she asked. Zex hesitated. "Months, maybe years. We need to learn the entire system from nothing. We need to..." He stopped. His expression changed. "Oh no. What?" "If the network is down, the peacekeeping drones have no oversight. They operate on local programming only. Without the ethical subroutine updates from the network, they will..." An explosion shook the building. Velshara ran to the window. In the plaza below, a peacekeeping drone fired on a crowd of protesters. They were Sen civilians demonstrating peacefully. The drone had identified them as a threat. More drones appeared. More weapons fire. People screamed and ran. "Bodies fell. Shut them down," Velshara shouted. "We cannot reach them without the network." She grabbed a communicator. It was dead. Everything was dead. She could only watch as the drones killed 17 people before finally powering down when their local batteries died. The news spread slowly, carried by ships and couriers instead of instant communication. Every world with peacekeeping drones reported similar incidents. The drones had been running on human-updated ethical programming. Without those updates, without network oversight, they reverted to basic threat assessment. Basic. Assessment meant anything unusual was a threat. Protests, gatherings, celebrations. The drones attacked them all. 143 people died in the first day. Thousands more in the following week. Finally, the council ordered all drones shut down permanently, but that created a new problem. Without drones, many worlds had no security. Crime rates exploded. Some colonies descended into chaos. Velshara barely slept. Reports flooded in faster than she could read them, each one worse than the last. The Void Station, a critical trading hub, began structural failure. Engineers examined it and found something terrifying. The station had a design flaw, a fundamental instability in its core structure. It should have collapsed decades ago, but it had not, because human engineers had been constantly patching it, small repairs, careful reinforcements, monitoring stress points and fixing problems before they became catastrophic. They had kept detailed records of every repair, but the records explained what they did, not why, not how to predict the next problem. Without humans maintaining it, the station was dying. 20,000 people lived there. Evacuation began, but there were not enough ships. Not with the network down, not with trade routes in chaos. The council sent every available vessel. They managed to evacuate 15,000 people before the central hub collapsed. 5,000 died, including 300 children. Velshara attended another memorial service. Then another. Then another. She stopped counting. Meanwhile, conflicts between species escalated. Without human mediators, old disputes reignited. The Kelvor and Prin finally went to war over their earlier misunderstanding. The fighting spread, trade embargoes, threatened alliances. The council was fracturing, then the plague arrived. It started on one agricultural world, a simple virus, containable if caught early. But no one was monitoring disease patterns anymore. No one saw it coming. By the time medical teams arrived, it had spread to 3 worlds, then 8, then 20. The death toll climbed into the millions. A doctor named Sari, a Velcor with 50 years of experience, reviewed the data. She came to Velshara with tears in her eyes. They knew, Sari said. The humans. Look at this. She showed Velshara files, medical reports dating back decades. Humans were tracking this virus. They knew it could mutate. They knew which worlds were vulnerable. They had prevention protocols ready. They were protecting us and we never even knew. Why did they not tell us? They did, look. Sari pulled up more files. Reports submitted to the Medical Council. Requests for funding to establish monitoring stations. Proposals for pandemic prevention programs. Dozens of them over the years. All marked as low priority. All ignored. We thought they were being paranoid, Sari whispered. We thought they worried too much. So many of their warnings never came true. We did not realize that was because they were preventing the problems before they happened. The plague killed 4 million people before they contained it. It would have been worse, but human pharmaceutical companies started producing vaccines, not for the council. For humanitarian aid, they sent the vaccines free of charge to affected worlds. No message accompanied the shipments, no demands. Just containers of medicine with simple instructions. Threxen wanted to reject them. Human charity, he spat. They want us to beg. People are dying, Velshara said coldly. Distribute the vaccines, they did. The vaccines worked. The plague ended. Millions of lives were saved by the species that had supposedly abandoned the galaxy. Velshara sat in her office late one night. The building was mostly empty. Power was rationed now with the network down. She worked by the light of a single lamp. She had been investigating what humans actually did during their time in the council. The full scope of it. The complete picture, it was staggering. Humans had touched almost every aspect of galactic civilization, not because they sought power, not because they demanded important roles, but because they saw what needed doing and did it. They maintained infrastructure that everyone else took for granted. They solved problems that others did not even notice were problems. They volunteered for dangerous work. They helped species that could offer nothing in return, and they did it all while being dismissed as simple laborers. as grunt workers, as a young naive species doing basic tasks. Velshara found a file that made her want to weep. It was a budget analysis from 80 years ago. It showed that humans had been paying not only their own council membership fees, but also anonymously subsidizing 32 smaller species who could not afford full membership for 80 years. Trillions of credits, never asking for recognition, never demanding favors in return. She found another file, a human-authored report on council efficiency. It was comprehensive, brilliant. It outlined exactly how to improve every system, how to make the council stronger and fairer. It had been submitted to the leadership committee 40 years ago. The report had been rejected as naive idealism from an inexperienced species. Velshara laughed. It was a bitter, broken sound. She laughed until she cried. Then she just cried. Her communicator chimed, one of the few that still worked on local networks. It was Zex. "We have intercepted another message from human space," he said. "You need to hear this." She went to the communication center. Zex played the recording. It was a transmission between human colonies. A progress report. The dark matter drive is operational. We have achieved faster-than-light travel without using the jump gate network. We are no longer dependent on galactic infrastructure. Colony establishment in the Eagle sector is proceeding ahead of schedule. Population growth is strong. Scientific advancement is accelerating now that we are not spending 70% of our resources maintaining someone else's civilization. The voice paused. Then, has anyone heard from the council? No, and good riddance. We tried for 150 years. We gave everything we had. They never even said thank you. Let them figure it out themselves. Laughter. Agreement. The transmission ended. Velshara looked at Zex. They do not need us. They never did. No, Zex agreed. We needed them. We still do. And they are gone. Outside, another section of the void station collapsed. More people died. The galaxy was falling apart piece by piece, and the humans who could have held it together were gone, building something new, something that did not include the Council. 1 year after the humans left, the Galactic Council met in emergency session. But it was not the same council. 40 species had withdrawn from the Alliance. The Grand Chamber that once held 300 representatives now held barely 150. Velshara looked at the empty seats and felt hollow. Everything was falling apart. We must bring the humans back, Councillor Preck said. She looked older now, tired. We cannot survive like this. Agreed, said another councillor. Then another. Even some who had opposed humans before nodded. The evidence was impossible to ignore. Without humans, galactic civilization was collapsing. Threxen stood. His scales had lost their shine. He had aged badly in the past year. Then we show them strength. We send our fleet to Earth. We demand they return and fix what they broke. They broke nothing, Velshara said quietly. They abandoned their responsibilities. What responsibilities? Velshara activated the chamber's main display. Data filled the screen. I have spent a year researching. Let me share what I learned. She pulled up the first document. This is a report from 120 years ago. Human engineers requested funding to upgrade the data network architecture. They explained it would prevent exactly the collapse we experienced. The request was denied. They upgraded it anyway, using their own funding. Another document. This is from 90 years ago. Human medical personnel warned about pandemic vulnerabilities. They requested resources to establish monitoring systems. Denied. They built the systems themselves. More documents. Dozens. Hundreds. Maintenance requests. Training proposals. System improvements. Disaster prevention plans, all submitted by humans, all ignored or rejected, and yet humans implemented most of them anyway, using their own time and resources. The chamber was silent. Velshara continued. Humans filed over 10,000 reports during their time in the Council. Reports detailing system vulnerabilities, offers to train other species, warnings about future problems. We dismissed every single one. She paused. Let that sink in. They were not doing simple tasks. They were doing essential tasks that we considered beneath us, and they did them despite being treated with contempt. Cathres shifted uncomfortably. We did not treat them with contempt, did we not? Velshara pulled up video recordings. Council sessions from years past. She played them, Ambassador Chen speaking about medical supply distribution. Counselor Prex talking over her, dismissing her ideas. A human engineer explaining infrastructure problems. Threxen laughing, calling it worrying about things that have not happened yet. Human diplomats raising concerns about smaller species being exploited in trade agreements. The trade guild ignoring them, moving to the next topic without discussion. Again and again. Humans trying to speak, being interrupted, being dismissed, being told to stay in their lane. They tried to help, Velshara said. For 150 years they tried, and we treated them like servants. Threxen's voice was quieter now. They should have demanded respect. They did, quietly, constantly, by doing essential work with excellence, by always being reliable, by helping everyone who needed it. That is how humans demand respect, through action. We simply chose not to give it. A young counselor, a Sen named Kor, who had joined only recently, raised a tentacle. May I speak? Velshara nodded. I was not on the council when humans were here, Kor said, but I have reviewed the records. I found something interesting. The membership fees. Humans paid their fees on time every year, but I noticed discrepancies in the accounts of smaller species. They should have been expelled for non-payment, but they remained members. I traced the payments. They came from anonymous sources. He pulled up financial records. For 80 years, humans paid the membership fees for 32 species who could not afford them. They donated trillions of credits, anonymously, never asking for favors or recognition. The chamber erupted. Counselors who had benefited from human charity looked shocked. Others looked ashamed. Threxen sat down heavily. Why? Someone asked. Why would they do that? Velshara had wondered the same thing. She had found a report written by Ambassador Chen, submitted in her final year. A report titled The Purpose of Civilization. No one had read it at the time. Velshara had read it last week, she quoted from memory. A civilization is not judged by the glory of its greatest achievements, but by how it treats those who have nothing to offer in return. We help not because we expect gratitude, but because help is needed. We serve not because we seek power, but because service is valuable. We give not to gain, but because giving itself is the reward. The words hung in the air. Simple words. Basic philosophy. But they cut like knives. They meant it, Velshara said. They actually believed in helping others. Not as strategy. Not for gain. They just believed it was right. Then why did they leave? Prex asked. Because there is a difference between service and servitude. Between helping and being exploited. They served willingly for 150 years. They helped us build something they believed in. But we never treated them as equals. We never listened. We never thanked them. And when they proposed one meaningful change, one amendment to make the system fairer for everyone, we voted it down without real consideration. Velshara pulled up the vote record. 47 species voted no. Most never even read the full proposal. They voted no because humans proposed it. Because if we accepted their ideas, we would have to admit they were equals, that they understood things we did not, and we could not accept that. Shame filled the chamber, hot and heavy. Counselors who had voted against the amendment looked away. So what do we do? Cathres asked. Our economies are collapsing. People are dying. Entire sectors are falling into chaos. We need humans. How do we bring them back? We do not, Velshara said. What? We have no leverage. They do not need us, look. She displayed more intercepted transmissions. Human colonies thriving, human science advancing rapidly, human culture flourishing. They had faster-than-light technology that did not depend on council jump gates. They had sustainable economies. They were happy. They are building their own civilization now, Velshara continued. Without us, without our rules and restrictions, without being treated as lesser. And they are succeeding. So we are doomed, Threxen said bitterly. Perhaps not entirely. Humans are still offering contractor services. We could hire them. Several counselors perked up. Then we, at triple their previous compensation, with strict limited contracts. They come, do specific work, and leave. No permanent positions. No council membership. Just business. That is extortion. That is the market rate for essential skills we do not have. They are being generous. They could charge 10 times as much. They could refuse entirely. But humans still believe in helping even when we do not deserve it. The council debated for hours, but they had no choice. They could not fix their own systems. They could not maintain their own infrastructure. They needed humans, so they hired human contractors. at triple cost. With limited contracts, the humans who came were polite, professional, distant. They fixed what they were hired to fix. They fulfilled their contracts exactly, not one bit more. And then they left immediately. No socializing, no mentoring, no volunteering for extra work. Just the job. Nothing more. It hurt more than hatred would have. Humans did not seem angry. They were just done. Done trying to be part of something that did not want them. Done giving more than they received. Done hoping for acknowledgement. They were polite strangers now. Nothing more. Velshara watched human contractors work on the data network. They were efficient, brilliant. They fixed in days what council technicians could not fix in months. But they did not explain how. They did not train anyone. They just completed the work and left. Could you teach us? Zex asked one human engineer. The woman looked at him. Her expression was not cruel, just tired. We tried that for 150 years. You were not interested. Our contract is to fix the network, not provide education. If you want training, that is a separate contract. At a separate rate. How much? She named a figure. It was astronomical. Zex could not afford it. The council could not afford it. Not for training everyone who needed it. The engineer shrugged. Then I guess you will need to figure it out yourselves. That is what you wanted, right? You said anyone could do this work. Prove it. She left the next day. Her contracted work complete. Perfect professional. Cold Velshara received a communication that evening. A single message from Earth, not a government message. It came from Ambassador Chen personally. Now retired Ambassador Chen. Arbiter Velshara. I hope you are well. I heard you have been investigating what happened. I want you to know that most humans do not hate the Council. We are just disappointed. We tried so hard to be part of something greater. But you never saw us as partners, only as convenient workers. That hurts more than anger. I hope someday you understand why we left. And I hope even more that you learn from it. Not for our sake, but for yours. The galaxy deserves better than what it has become. Sincerely, Ambassador Sarah Chen. Velshara read the message 3 times. Then she put her head down on her desk and cried. 18 months after the humans left, Velshara retired from the council. She was tired, old. She had spent her entire life in service to galactic civilization. Now she watched that civilization struggle to survive. The council still existed. Barely. Less than 100 species remained as members. Many had withdrawn to form smaller regional alliances. Others had simply isolated themselves. The grand dream of galactic unity had fractured, but it had not died completely. The council survived. Slowly, painfully, they were learning to function without humans doing everything. Human contractors still came when hired. They fixed critical problems. They kept vital systems running. But every contract cost more than the council could really afford. Every human worker did exactly what they were paid to do and nothing more. No volunteering. No going beyond the contract. No helping just because they saw something that needed fixing. That era was over. Velshara sat in her small apartment and began writing. She had spent the past year researching, interviewing, compiling data. Now she would write the truth. A complete historical analysis. She called it The Silence. It would be her final contribution to the galaxy. A warning, a lesson, a record of what happened when people took essential workers for granted. She started with numbers. Hard data. Humans had represented 3% of council membership, but they had handled 70% of essential. Operations, maintenance, logistics, coordination, mediation, all the work that kept civilization running, while other species focused on grand debates about philosophy and policy. Humans fixed broken infrastructure. While councils argued about art and culture, humans prevented diseases. While politicians made speeches, humans trained new technicians and helped struggling colonies. They did it without complaint, without demanding recognition. They just saw what needed doing and did it. Velshara wrote about the Universal Translator Network. Humans had built it from almost nothing. They had incorporated languages from 300 species. They had maintained it so smoothly that no one even thought about it, until it stopped working. She wrote about the trade routes. Human logistics coordinators had optimized shipping lanes for efficiency and fairness. They had prevented monopolies. They had ensured small colonies received supplies. They had made the system work for everyone, not just the powerful. She wrote about the medical networks. Human doctors and researchers had prevented 17 pandemics in 150 years. 17. Most species never knew because the diseases never spread. Humans stopped them before they started. She wrote about peacekeeping drones. Human programmers had updated their ethics systems monthly. They had taught machines to value life, to choose peace over violence. Without that guidance, the drones became killers. She wrote about the humans themselves, their strange philosophy, their belief that service was not weakness but strength, that helping others was not naive but noble, that the measure of civilization was not power but compassion. Other species contributed knowledge. The Sen had advanced philosophy. The Velcor had magnificent art. The Quill had brilliant mathematics. All important, all valuable. But humans contributed effort. They showed up. They worked. They cared. And the Council had confused their humility with weakness, their service with servitude, their willingness to help with an obligation to serve. That was the mistake. The fatal error. Humans had volunteered for difficult work because they believed in the Council's mission, because they wanted to help build something greater. But when the Council treated that volunteer service as an expectation, as something humans owed rather than something they chose to give, the relationship broke. The vote against their amendment was just the final straw. 150 years of being dismissed, of being talked over, of having their ideas stolen or ignored, of doing essential work without recognition, of trying to help and being treated like servants. They had endured all of it. But when the Council rejected their one major proposal without real consideration, humans finally understood. The Council did not want partners. It wanted workers. Useful, reliable, invisible workers, so humans left. They took all their skills and effort and built something new, something that valued them, something better. Belshara interviewed dozens of species for her report. She spoke to former colleagues of humans, to people who had worked beside them for decades. A Sen engineer told her about a human named Marcus who had trained him. He was patient, kind. He never made me feel stupid for not understanding. He just explained things different ways until I got it. When I finally fixed my first major system alone, he was more excited than I was. He celebrated my success like it was his own. A Velcor doctor spoke of a human colleague named Lisa. She worked impossible hours during the plague outbreak on Sector 7. She barely slept. When I asked why she pushed herself so hard, she said, "Because people are dying and I can help." It was that simple for her. She could help, so she did. A Quill diplomat described a human mediator named James. He resolved a trade dispute that had lasted 30 years. In 1 week, he just listened to both sides, really listened, and found a compromise that satisfied everyone. When I asked his secret, he said, "I just tried to understand what each side actually needed, not what they said they wanted." He made it sound easy. It was not, story after story. Humans who cared, who worked hard, who helped without expecting reward, who believed in something larger than themselves, and the Council had never truly valued them. Belshara finished her report. It was comprehensive, honest, brutal. It explained exactly what had happened and why. It did not excuse the Council's mistakes. It simply documented them. She submitted it to the Council archives. Required reading for all members. Some counselors refused to read it. Others read it and felt shame. A few, like young Core, read it and understood. The galaxy was changing. New species applying for Council membership were now evaluated carefully, not on their knowledge or culture alone, but on their willingness to contribute, to work, to help others. The Council learned slowly that civilizations need more than brilliant minds and ancient wisdom. They need people willing to do difficult, essential work. They need people who care about more than glory and recognition. They needed what humans had offered freely for 150 years. But humans were gone, building their own network of colonies, advancing their own science, creating their own culture. They traded with some Council species. They maintained professional relationships, but they did not return. The Council sent one final message to Earth, not a demand, not a plea, just an acknowledgement. To the human government and people, the Galactic Council acknowledges its failures. We took your service for granted. We dismissed your contributions. We treated you as workers rather than partners. We were wrong. We understand if you choose never to return, but we want you to know that we finally understand what we lost. Not just skilled workers, but people who believed in building something better. Thank you for everything you did. We are sorry we never said it before. The Galactic Council. The message was sent. Weeks passed. No response, then finally a message came back. Not from the government. From retired Ambassador Chen, acknowledged, "What you did to us hurt, but we are not cruel. We still believe in helping when we can. Perhaps in a few generations, when both our peoples have grown, we can try again. But this time it must be as equals, true equals, partners, not workers. This is not negotiable. If you can accept that, truly accept it, then maybe someday we can build something better together. But it must be earned. Respect cannot be given, only recognized. Prove you have changed. Prove you understand. Then we will talk. Until then, we wish you well. May you learn what we tried to teach through our work, if not our words." Former Ambassador Sarah Chen, speaking for many humans who still hope the galaxy can be better. Velshara included the message in her final report. Then she added her own conclusion. The humans left silently because they had tried speaking and no one listened. They left peacefully because violence was not in their nature. They left completely because half measures would have changed nothing. And they left us to face the consequences of our own choices. Some call this abandonment. I call it the most patient teaching method imaginable. Humans showed us what we truly valued by taking it away. They revealed how much we depended on work we considered simple. They proved that essential labor deserves respect regardless of who performs it. The question now is whether we learn the lesson. Whether we change, whether we become the civilization we claim to be but never actually were. Humans gave us 150 years of their best effort. They gave us countless chances to recognize their value. We failed every time. They do not owe us another chance. We must earn it, and that work begins now, not with grand speeches or noble intentions, but with the same kind of quiet, consistent, essential effort that humans showed us, with humility, with service, with understanding that the foundation of civilization is not the glory at the top, but the work that holds everything together. We must become worthy of partnership. Nothing less will do. This is my final report, my warning, my hope. May future generations read this and understand. May they value those who serve. May they recognize essential work. May they never again take for granted the people who keep civilization running.